The moment I walked through the country club doors, I knew I was late. The graduation party was already in full swing, crystal chandeliers glittering above perfectly dressed guests. I was still wearing my cleaning uniform, faded blue pants and a wrinkled polo shirt with Thompson Janitorial Services stitched across the pocket. My hands smelled like disinfectant despite scrubbing them twice in the bathroom. I spotted my daughter Lillian immediately. She stood in the center of the room, radiant in a cream-colored dress, surrounded by her friends. My ex-husband Gerald was beside her, looking polished in his tailored suit. His new wife Yvonne clung to his arm, dripping in jewelry I could never afford. I smiled and walked toward Lillian, my heart full of pride. My baby had graduated from college. 4 years of hard work had led to this moment. "Lillian, sweetheart," I said, reaching out to hug her. She turned, saw me, and her face transformed. Not with joy, with horror. She physically recoiled, stepping back so quickly she nearly knocked into a waiter. The conversation around us died. People turned to stare. "Can you not?" Lillian's voice was loud, cutting through the sudden silence. "You're embarrassing me. Look at you. You're a failure." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Dad and Yvonne paid for everything," she continued, gesturing toward Gerald and Yvonne. "What have you ever done for me?" The room went completely silent. I felt every eye on me. Gerald's lips curled into a smirk. Yvonne leaned close to Lillian and whispered something. Lillian nodded, her expression hardening. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I stood frozen, humiliation burning through every nerve in my body. The guests weren't even pretending not to stare anymore. Some pulled out their phones. Others whispered behind their hands. I turned toward the exit, blinking back tears. I just wanted to disappear. Then the doors opened again. Dean Richardson walked in, slightly out of breath, holding a leather folder against his chest. He was an older gentleman with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "My apologies for being late," he announced, scanning the room. He seemed confused by the tension hanging in the air. "I'm looking for someone specific. I have a special recognition to present." Gerald immediately straightened his tie and stepped forward, pulling Yvonne with him. He flashed his practiced smile, the one he used to close business deals. "That would be me," Gerald said confidently. "Gerald Hartwell. I'm Lillian's father." Dean Richardson looked down at his folder, then back up at Gerald, his eyebrows furrowed. "I'm sorry," the dean said slowly, "but I'm looking for Sarah Mitchell. Is Sarah Mitchell here?" Every head turned toward me. I raised my hand slightly, confused. "I'm Sarah Mitchell." The dean's face brightened. He walked directly to me, extending his hand. "Ms. Mitchell, it's wonderful to finally meet you in person. I've wanted to thank you face to face for quite some time." I shook his hand, completely bewildered. "Thank you for what?" Gerald interrupted. "Dean Richardson, there must be some confusion. I'm the one who paid for Lillian's education." The dean turned to Gerald, his expression shifting to uncomfortable uncertainty. "Sir, I'm sorry, but that's not what our records show," Dean Richardson said, opening his folder. Gerald laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "Of course it's what the records show. I wrote every check myself." He pulled Yvonne closer as if she were proof of his claims. She nodded vigorously. "We paid for everything," Yvonne added. "Every penny." Dean Richardson's discomfort grew. He looked at the papers in his hands, then at Gerald, then at me. "According to our financial records," the dean said carefully, "every tuition payment for the past 4 years came from Sarah Mitchell's personal bank account. The donations were made anonymously, but the routing numbers don't lie." The room erupted in whispers. Lillian's face drained of all color. "What?" Gerald's jaw actually dropped. "That's impossible." I felt the blood rush from my head. 4 years? I had only sent what I thought were small contributions. Maybe a few hundred here and there when I could. I never thought. "Miss Mitchell," the dean continued, turning fully toward me, "your consistent payments, your communication with our financial aid office, your dedication to ensuring your daughter's education was funded. It's been remarkable. The university wanted to recognize your sacrifice publicly." My hands began trembling. I looked at Lillian, whose eyes were now wide with confusion and something that might have been horror. Gerald was shaking his head. No, I gave Sarah money. She was supposed to forward it to the school. Those were my payments, just processed through her account." The dean looked back down at his documents. Sir, we have no record of any such arrangement. Gerald was stammering now, his polished composure cracking. There must be a mistake. I gave her the money, she was just the middleman. Yvonne's expression was changing. She turned to Gerald, her perfectly painted lips pressed into a thin line. You told me we paid for this, she said coldly. We did, Gerald insisted. She must have, I don't know, maybe she used my money, but it went through her account. Dean Richardson pulled out more papers. Mr. Hartwell, I personally spoke with Ms. Mitchell multiple times over the past 4 years. She worked out payment plans directly with our financial office. She made these payments through direct bank transfers from her personal checking account. He turned to me. I remember the first time we spoke, Ms. Mitchell. You were working out how to pay for Lillian's first semester. You told me you'd just picked up a second job to make it work. My throat tightened. I remembered that conversation. I'd called from my car between my day shift at the grocery store and my night shift cleaning offices. Lillian was staring at me now. Really staring, like she was seeing me for the first time. Mom? Her voice was small. According to our records, the dean continued, Miss Mitchell has paid exactly $127,000 over 4 years. The number hung in the air like smoke. Gerald made a choking sound. Yvonne's face went white, then red. 127,000? Yvonne repeated. Her voice was shrill. You said you were paying for college. You told me. I was going to, Gerald interrupted desperately. I had the money set aside. But you didn't actually pay, the dean said quietly. The silence was deafening. I could feel everyone's eyes burning into me. Lillian looked like she might faint. I found my voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. I kept records, every payment, every receipt. I saved them for Lillian. Everyone turned to look at me. I wanted to give them to her after graduation, I continued. My hands were still shaking. I made a memory box. It's in my car. Lillian's best friend Jenna spoke up from the crowd. I'll get it. She had witnessed Lillian's earlier cruelty, and now her eyes were bright with something like vindication. Where's your car? Blue Honda. Parking lot, 3rd row, under the front seat. Jenna nodded and hurried out. The party had come to a complete standstill. No one was eating. No one was drinking. Everyone was frozen, waiting. Gerald pulled Lillian aside, his hand on her elbow. He leaned close, whispering urgently in her ear. His face was red, his movements jerky with desperation. Yvonne had pulled out her phone and was typing furiously, her jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscles working. I stood there in my cleaning uniform, surrounded by people in designer clothes, and waited. The dean remained beside me, his presence somehow comforting. He didn't seem embarrassed to be associated with me, despite my appearance. Miss Mitchell, he said quietly, I hope you know that what you did, putting your daughter through college on your income, that's extraordinary. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Jenna returned quickly, slightly out of breath, carrying a worn shoebox with a faded purple ribbon tied around it. Jenna handed me the box. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Should I? I looked at Lillian. She nodded, her face pale. Gerald had stopped whispering to her. Even he looked uncertain now. I untied the ribbon. It fell away. I lifted the lid. Inside were 4 years of documentation, organized by semester. Payment confirmations from the university, receipts from bank transfers, emails with the financial aid office, thank you letters from the university acknowledging donations. But there was more. I had written notes on many of the receipts, little messages to myself, reminders of why the sacrifice mattered. I pulled out the first one, my handwriting in blue ink, Lillian's fall semester, worth every double shift. Lillian made a small sound. I pulled out another. Spring semester. Cut back on groceries, but she's staying in school. Another. Junior year. Overtime at the warehouse. My back hurts, but her dreams don't. Lillian's hands flew to her mouth. Jenna was quietly pulling out items too, laying them on a nearby table. There were photographs I'd included. Pictures of me at my various jobs over the years. One showed me in an office building at night, cleaning floors, wearing my janitorial uniform. Another showed me in a restaurant apron, carrying trays. A third showed me in a safety vest at dawn, delivering packages from a van. You worked all these jobs? Lillian whispered. I nodded. 3 jobs, sometimes 4 during busy semesters. The room was completely silent except for Lillian's increasingly ragged breathing. Yvonne suddenly exploded. This is pathetic. She stepped forward, her voice dripping with contempt. You're trying to upstage us at our party? We hosted this. We bought Lillian her car. We paid for her apartment. We bought her entire wardrobe. What's $80,000 in tuition compared to real support? Her words were meant to cut me down. They might have worked if I didn't have proof. It's actually $127,000, I said quietly, pulling out a final summary statement from the box. And I couldn't afford the university meal plan, so I sent Lillian grocery money separately. Every month. I reached deeper into the box and pulled out a stack of bank statements. They were highlighted in yellow, every transaction marked Lillian food money or Lillian groceries. $200 a month for 4 years, I said. That's another $9,600. Lillian gasped. I thought. Her voice broke. I thought Dad was sending that. Gerald had gone very still. So the real total, I continued, doing the math in my head, is closer to $137,000, give or take a few hundred. Yvonne looked like she'd been slapped. Several guests were now openly recording the confrontation on their phones. Lillian's hands trembled as she picked up the bank statements. She traced the highlighted entries with her finger. Every single month, like clockwork, a transfer labeled for her. I never knew, she whispered. You never said anything. You weren't supposed to know, I said. I just wanted you to focus on your studies. Yvonne wasn't finished. Well, we still provided the car, and the apartment, and… Lillian interrupted Yvonne, her voice cracking. The car? The BMW you and Dad gave me for Christmas sophomore year? Lillian looked at Gerald, then at me. That was from you guys, right? The bow, the card, everything said it was from Dad and Yvonne. My chest tightened. This was one of the hardest truths. Sweetheart, I began carefully, I made the down payment on that car, and I made the first year of payments. Then your dad and Yvonne refinanced it under their name. That's a lie. Gerald roared, stepping forward. His face was crimson. That is an absolute lie, Sarah. I reached back into the box, my hands closed around a manila envelope. I pulled it out and handed it to Lillian. Original loan papers, I said. My name, my signature, the dealership records, all of it. Lillian opened the envelope with shaking hands. She pulled out the documents and read them. Her face cycled through disbelief, shock, and then something that looked like rage. This is your signature, she said to me. Her voice was hollow. Your bank account, your loan. Gerald lunged forward, trying to grab the papers. Let me see those. Lillian pulled them away. Don't touch them. Several of Lillian's friends had moved closer, phones out. Someone whispered, This is absolutely insane. Another voice, Are you getting all this? Lillian looked at the documents for a long moment. When she finally looked up at me, tears were streaming down her face. The whole time, she said. The whole time, I thought. She couldn't finish the sentence. Jenna put a protective hand on Lillian's shoulder. Your mom worked 3 jobs while you were in school. I saw her sometimes when I'd visit. She'd fall asleep at the kitchen table with bills spread out everywhere. Lillian's tears were falling faster now. She turned to me, her voice desperate. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe Dad was paying for everything? My own tears finally broke free. Because your father asked me not to. Gerald went very still. When we divorced, I continued, my voice breaking. He said it would confuse you, that you needed stability, that you needed to respect him as a father. He promised he'd tell you the truth when you were older, when you could understand. He said he was protecting you from having to deal with adult problems. Lillian looked at Gerald. You knew? This whole time, you knew Mom was paying for school and you let me think it was you? Gerald's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. He said it was temporary, I added. He said he was having some financial difficulties but that he'd pay me back eventually. He made me promise not to tell you because he didn't want you to worry or think less of him. Yvonne was staring at Gerald now with an expression of pure fury. You told me, she said, her voice dangerously quiet, that you paid for Lillian's education. You used that as proof of what a good father you were. I was going to, Gerald started. You were going to what? Yvonne snapped. Pay her back with money you don't have? You? She stopped abruptly, as if realizing she was revealing too much in public. Lillian looked between her parents, understanding finally clicking into place. You've been lying to me my whole life. Gerald reached for her. Lillian, sweetheart? Don't touch me, she said, stepping back. Her voice was cold. "Don't you dare touch me right now." Jenna, who had been quietly watching, suddenly spoke up. "Lillian, remember junior year when your dad surprised you with that apartment?" Lillian nodded, confused by the change in subject. "Your mom came to help you move in," Jenna continued. "I was there that day. I thought it was weird that she had keys to the apartment already, like she opened the door before you even got the keys from the landlord." Lillian turned to me, questions in her eyes. I took a breath. "I found that apartment, honey. I spent weeks looking at listings, visiting places. I negotiated the lease, paid the security deposit and first month's rent. I wanted to make sure you had somewhere safe to live." "But the lease had Dad's name on it," Lillian said. "I know. He put his name on the lease when you signed. He told the landlord he was taking over the rental agreement." I pulled another document from the box. "But this is the original application. My name. My bank statement for the deposit. My references." Lillian took the paper with trembling hands. She stared at it for a long moment. The dean, who had been watching everything unfold in stunned silence, cleared his throat. "I think I should mention that during our phone conversations, Ms. Mitchell, you also asked about work-study programs for Lillian. You wanted to make sure Lillian had the option to earn some of her own money." "I never heard about work-study," Lillian said quietly. Gerald shifted uncomfortably. "That's because I told your mother I'd handle discussing it with you," Gerald said quickly. I thought you needed to focus on your grades." More phones were out now, more people recording. I saw Lillian's grandmother, Gerald's mother, standing near the back of the room. She was watching her son with an expression I'd never seen before, disappointment mixed with disgust. Gerald tried a different approach. His voice became defensive, aggressive. Fine. I was going to pay you back, Sarah. Those were loans. I was keeping track." "Really?" Something hard crystallized inside me. 4 years of biting my tongue, of protecting his reputation, of letting him take credit for my sacrifice, it all came flooding out. "Then explain why you bought Yvonne a $90,000 Mercedes last year." Yvonne's eyes went wide. "Explain why you took 3 European vacations. Explain why you just remodeled your entire house. You make $250,000 a year, Gerald. I made $38,000 working 3 jobs. But somehow you couldn't afford $127,000 for your daughter's education?" The guests gasped. Someone whispered, "Wait, she made how much?" "I saw the car, Gerald," I continued, my voice steady despite the tears on my face. "I saw the vacation photos on Lillian's social media. I saw the designer clothes, the jewelry. I watched you spend money on everything except the one thing that actually mattered." Gerald's colleague, a man I recognized from his office, was standing near the bar. His face had gone pale. He looked at Gerald with barely concealed horror. "I worked night shifts cleaning offices," I said. "I worked weekends at a grocery store. I delivered packages at 5 a.m. I did all of that so Lillian could have an education. And you bought a Mercedes." Yvonne slowly turned to face Gerald. "You told me we couldn't afford to help your daughter. You said she'd have to take out loans. You told me." "I was trying to protect my business," Gerald said desperately. "I had investments." "You had investments?" Yvonne's voice rose. "We have debt, we have." She stopped again, shaking her head. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lillian's grandmother, Gerald's mother, suddenly stood up from her seat near the back. She was an elegant woman in her 70s, usually quiet and composed. Everyone turned to look at her. "Gerald," she said, her voice cutting through the room, "you told me Sarah got the house in the divorce. You said she was financially comfortable. You said I didn't need to worry about her or Lillian." I felt my face grow hot. This was another truth I'd hidden. "I did get the house," I said quietly. "But it came with a mortgage I couldn't afford on my salary. I tried for 6 months, but I was drowning. I sold it." I pulled out my phone and found a photo. "This is where I've lived for the past 9 years. I held up the phone. The image showed a tiny studio apartment. 1 room with a small kitchenette in the corner. A twin bed. A single window overlooking a parking lot. Everything neat and clean, but unmistakably sparse. Lillian's hand flew to her mouth. "You lived there? This whole time?" "It's $650 a month," I said. "All I could afford after Lillian's expenses." Lillian's grandmother had tears in her eyes now. She walked toward me, moving slowly but deliberately, When she reached me, she took my hands in hers. "My dear child," she said, "I had no idea. If I had known." Her voice broke. She turned to Gerald. "You let me believe she was fine. You let me believe you were supporting Lillian. You've lied to everyone in this family." Gerald tried to speak, but his mother held up her hand. "I'm not finished," she said coldly. "I put money aside for Lillian. I gave you control of that money because you're my son and I trusted you. Now I'm wondering where that money went." Lillian went very still. "What money?" Before Gerald could respond, my best friend Rachel spoke up. She'd been standing quietly near the wall, but now she stepped forward. "Tell them about the child support, Sarah," Rachel said, her voice firm. I shook my head slightly. I didn't want to go there. Not here. But Rachel continued anyway. "Gerald was court-ordered to pay $1,500 a month in child support. The judge mandated it. It was supposed to help with Lillian's expenses while she was growing up." Lillian looked at Gerald. "You paid child support, right?" The silence was answer enough. "He paid for maybe 6 months," Rachel said. "Then the checks stopped coming. Sarah never pursued it." "Why not?" Lillian asked me, her voice small. I looked down at my hands. This was the hardest truth of all. "He threatened to sue for full custody if I did," I said quietly. "He said he'd take you away from me. He said he had lawyers, money, connections. He said no judge would believe a struggling single mother could provide better than he could. And I was terrified of losing you. So I let it go." Lillian made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. The dean was writing something in his folder. I caught a glimpse of the words legal implications and financial aid fraud. Gerald's face was bright red now. Yvonne had taken several steps away from him, her expression a mixture of fury and calculation. "You threatened to take Lillian?" Lillian's grandmother asked, her voice shaking with rage. "You threatened your own ex-wife with custody to avoid your legal obligations?" "It wasn't like that," Gerald said desperately. "It was. We were both emotional after the divorce. Things were said." "You're damn right, things were said," Rachel interrupted. "I was there when you called her. I heard you tell her she was worthless, that no judge would choose her over you." Lillian collapsed into a nearby chair. Her breathing was rapid, shallow. She was hyperventilating. "I called you a failure," she gasped out between breaths. "I said you did nothing. Oh my God, Mom. I thanked them. In my speech earlier, I gave a whole toast, thanking Dad and Yvonne for everything they did for me." She was full-on crying now, her face in her hands. Her friends rushed to her side. Jenna knelt down, trying to comfort her. "I can't breathe," Lillian gasped. "I can't, I said such horrible things." I moved toward her, but she held up a hand, stopping me. "Don't," she choked out. "I don't deserve. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." "Lillian, baby," I said, kneeling beside her chair anyway. "You didn't know. This isn't your fault." "Yes, it is," she wailed. "I believed everything he said. I never questioned it. I just assumed you were, that you couldn't." She couldn't finish the sentences. I pulled her into my arms. She was sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I held my daughter and cried with her, surrounded by strangers and friends and family, all witnesses to our pain and our healing. Jenna was crying too. Several of Lillian's other friends had tears streaming down their faces. "You worked 3 jobs, Lillian sobbed against my shoulder. "You worked 3 jobs, and I didn't even know. I never even asked. I never wondered why you were always tired, why you never had nice things, why you lived in that tiny apartment. I just thought." "Shh," I whispered, stroking her hair. "It's okay. You're okay. We're okay." But the room wasn't done with Gerald yet. In the emotional chaos surrounding Lillian and me, Yvonne's carefully maintained composure finally cracked completely. She turned on Gerald with fury in her eyes. "You swore you were paying for her education," she hissed. "You told me that's where the money was going. You said we couldn't afford certain things because you were putting Lillian through college." Gerald tried to reach for her. "Yvonne, not here." "Yes, here," she shouted, pulling away from him. "I wouldn't have married you if I'd known you were this broke. I wouldn't have." She stopped, realizing what she'd just admitted. Gerald's face went from red to purple. "Broke? Broke? I paid for your medical spa. I paid for your shopping addiction. I paid for everything you ever wanted." "With what money?" Yvonne screamed back. "You clearly didn't have money for your own daughter." They were fully arguing now, not caring about the audience. Guests were backing away, creating a wide circle around them. "I gave you everything," Gerald yelled. "You gave me lies." Yvonne shot back. Lillian's grandmother had her iPad out. I realized with shock that she was recording them. She caught me looking and mouthed, "Evidence." Gerald and Yvonne's fight escalated. They were saying horrible things to each other, revealing intimate details of their finances, their marriage, their resentments, and then Yvonne said something that made everyone in the room go silent. "And another thing," she spat. "I've been using Lillian's college fund that your mother left her to pay our mortgage for the past 2 years." The silence was absolute. Lillian's grandmother dropped her iPad. It clattered on the marble floor. "What college fund?" Lillian whispered. Lillian's grandmother had gone completely white. She gripped the back of a chair for support. "I put $50,000 in a trust for Lillian when she was born," she said, her voice shaking. "Gerald, you were the trustee. I trusted you to save it for her education. You stole from your own daughter?" Lillian's grandmother's voice rose with each word. "You stole $50,000 from a trust fund I set up? Money that was specifically designated for Lillian's education?" Gerald was backing up now, his hands raised. "Mom, it wasn't like that. It was a loan. I was going to pay it back." "With what?" his mother demanded. "You clearly don't have any money. You can't pay for your daughter's tuition, you can't pay child support, but somehow you have a Mercedes and European vacations?" The dean, who I'd almost forgotten was still present, cleared his throat. Everyone turned to look at him. He had his phone out. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, "but I've been texting with our university legal counsel. If funds that were legally designated for educational purposes were misappropriated," he looked directly at Gerald, "that's embezzlement. That's a serious federal crime." Gerald's face went from purple to gray. Yvonne had gone completely silent, her hand over her mouth. "I didn't," Gerald started. "You admitted it," the dean said calmly. "Your wife just confessed that she's been using Lillian's designated education fund to pay your personal mortgage. In front of what?" He looked around. 50 witnesses, many of whom are recording? Gerald tried to leave. He actually turned and headed for the door, but my brother James, who had just arrived, stepped in front of the exit. James was 6'3" and built like a linebacker. He crossed his arms. "Oh no," James said quietly. "You're not going anywhere. You're going to stand here and face every single person you lied to." Gerald looked around wildly, like a trapped animal. There was no escape. Every exit was blocked by people who now knew the truth. Yvonne tried to edge toward a different door, but Lillian's friends moved to block her too. "You don't get to run," Jenna said coldly. "Not after what you did." The dean was still on his phone, typing rapidly. "Our legal counsel has advised me to inform you, Mr. Hartwell, that the university takes financial fraud very seriously. If there's evidence that you deliberately deceived both your ex-wife and your daughter about funding sources, there may be legal ramifications beyond just the trust fund matter." Gerald slumped against the wall. The fight seemed to drain out of him all at once. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said weakly. Things got complicated." "Complicated?" Lillian stood up, still shaky but fury giving her strength. "You stole from me. You let Mom work herself to exhaustion while you took credit for her sacrifice. You lied to everyone, your mother, your daughter, your wife." "Ex-wife soon," Yvonne muttered. Several people heard her and looked startled. Lillian's grandmother had her phone out now too. "I'm calling my attorney," she announced. "Gerald, you will return every penny of Lillian's trust fund with interest, or I will pursue criminal charges. I'm also restructuring my will. As of this moment, you're getting nothing." Gerald made a desperate sound. "Mom, please. Don't call me that," she said coldly. "The son I raised would never steal from his own child. The son I raised would never let a woman work 3 jobs while he took vacations. You are not the man I thought you were. You disgust me." She turned to me, her eyes soft. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I believed his lies too, if I had known what you were going through." "It's not your fault," I said. My voice was hoarse from crying. James put a hand on my shoulder. "The important thing is everyone knows the truth now," he said. Then he looked at Gerald. "And that there are consequences." The dean closed his phone. "Mr. Hartwell, miss." He looked at Yvonne uncertainly. "I'm getting my maiden name back," Yvonne said flatly. "Don't associate me with him." The dean nodded. The university will be conducting a full review of Lillian's financial records. If we find evidence of fraud or misappropriation, we're required to report it to the authorities. Lillian was still standing, swaying slightly. Her friends were clustered around her protectively. She looked at Gerald, really looked at him, for what felt like the first time. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. It had strength I'd never heard before. "You made me believe my mother was worthless," she said. "You bought my love with money while she sacrificed everything. You manipulated me into thinking she was a failure when she was actually the strongest person in my life." She took a shaky breath. "You told me I should be grateful to you and Yvonne, that I owed you everything. That Mom wasn't capable of providing for me. You were so convincing that I believed it. I treated her like she was embarrassing. Like she was nothing." Tears were streaming down her face again, but her voice didn't waver. "You're right, Dad. There is a failure in this family." She paused. "But it isn't her." The room erupted in applause, not polite party applause, real, thunderous applause mixed with cheers. Lillian crossed the room to me. When she reached me, she threw her arms around me and held on like she might drown if she let go. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Mom." "I know, baby," I whispered back. "I know." Over Lillian's shoulder, I saw Gerald standing alone. Yvonne had moved to the far side of the room. His mother had turned her back on him. His colleagues were shaking their heads in disgust. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The man who had once controlled every aspect of my life through fear and manipulation now looked pathetic. Justice didn't feel the way I expected. It didn't feel triumphant. It just felt necessary. Like setting down a weight I'd carried for too long. Dean Richardson approached us. "Miss Mitchell, if I may, there's someone here who'd like to speak with you." A well-dressed woman in her 50s approached. She had kind eyes and an air of authority. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. "Miss Mitchell," she said, with a warm smile. "I'm Patricia Chen. I'm the CFO of Peterson & Associates." My heart skipped. Peterson & Associates, the office building I'd been cleaning for the past 3 years. You clean the offices there, don't you?" Patricia continued. "Third floor, every night from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.? I felt my face flush with embarrassment. Of all the ways to be recognized. "I've watched you work for 3 years, Patricia said, and there was genuine admiration in her voice. "You're there every single night. You're thorough, professional, and I've noticed something else." She smiled. "I've seen you studying during your breaks. You always have textbooks spread out in the break room. What were you studying for?" I couldn't believe she'd noticed. I was finishing my bachelor's degree in accounting." Patricia's smile widened. "You dropped out when you got pregnant with Lillian, didn't you?" I nodded, confused about how she knew that. "I may have looked at your employment application," Patricia admitted. "When I noticed how dedicated you were, I got curious. A woman who works 3 jobs and still finds time to study? That's remarkable." Lillian was listening intently, holding my hand. "Miss Mitchell, I have a question for you," Patricia said. "And please be honest. When were you planning to graduate?" My throat tightened. I graduated this morning. At 10 a.m. It was a small ceremony across town." Lillian's gasp was audible. "Mom? You graduated? Today?" I nodded, tears falling again. "It was nothing fancy, just a quick ceremony. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to take attention away from your day. Today was supposed to be about you, honey." "You had your own graduation this morning," Lillian repeated, her voice breaking. "And you still came here, after everything I said to you, after I called you a failure. You still came to my party." I touched her face gently. "You're my daughter. Where else would I be?" Lillian collapsed against me, sobbing so hard she couldn't speak. Patricia waited patiently, her eyes misty. When Lillian finally calmed down enough to listen, Patricia continued. "Miss Mitchell, Sarah, I need to tell you something else. The reason I noticed you, the reason I looked into your background, is because I've been searching for someone exactly like you for our accounting department." I stared at her. "We need someone with grit," Patricia said. "Someone with dedication. Someone who understands the value of hard work. All the credentials in the world don't mean anything if the person doesn't have character." She pulled a business card from her purse. "We have an entry-level position open in our accounting department. $65,000 a year to start, full benefits, standard Monday to Friday hours. If you're interested, I'd like you to interview next week. My legs felt weak. $65,000. That was almost twice what I made now working 3 jobs. I couldn't find words. I've seen your work ethic firsthand, Patricia continued. I've seen you stay late to finish tasks that weren't even your responsibility. I've seen you train new cleaners with patience and kindness. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of employee you'd be. Dean Richardson stepped forward. I can provide an academic reference, he offered. 4.0 GPA. Dean's list every semester she was enrolled, despite working multiple jobs the entire time. The room was silent except for Lillian's quiet crying against my shoulder. I looked at Patricia's card. My hand was shaking. Are you serious? Completely, Patricia said warmly. You've already proven yourself. The interview is just a formality. James pulled out his phone. Actually, Mom, I have something to show everyone. Lillian looked up, confused. What? I filmed Sarah's graduation this morning, James said. She didn't want anyone there because she said it would distract from Lillian's day. But I went anyway. I wasn't going to let her walk across that stage alone. He pressed play. The video showed me in a cap and gown, one of only a handful of adult students in the ceremony. I was walking across a small stage in a modest auditorium. No family in the audience, or so I'd thought. In the video, my name was called Sarah Mitchell, Bachelor of Science in Accounting, magna cum laude. I walked across the stage alone, accepted my diploma. The pride on my face was mixed with sadness. I'd wanted Lillian there, but I'd convinced myself it was better this way. In the video, I was crying as I returned to my seat. Silent tears of accomplishment mixed with loneliness. The party guests watched in complete silence. When the video ended, several people were wiping their eyes. You graduated this morning, Lillian said, her voice hollow with shock. You achieved something incredible, and you came here to watch me get praised for something you actually did. I opened my mouth to respond, but Lillian held up her hand. I praised Dad and Yvonne in front of everyone, she continued, her voice getting stronger. I gave a whole speech about how grateful I was to them. I said Dad taught me the value of education and hard work. I said Yvonne showed me what success looks like. And all along, she couldn't finish. She turned to Gerald and Yvonne, who were still standing awkwardly near the wall. You let me praise you, she said, her voice sharp with anger. You stood there and smiled and accepted my gratitude, knowing it should have gone to her. Gerald looked at the floor. Yvonne examined her nails. That's what makes you failures, Lillian said. Not lack of money, not lack of success, lack of integrity. The applause was deafening. Patricia waited for the applause to die down before speaking again. Miss Mitchell, Sarah, I want to make sure you understand something. This job offer isn't charity. It's not because I feel sorry for you or because of what happened today. She looked me directly in the eyes. I've been planning to approach you for months. I just wasn't sure how to do it without making you feel uncomfortable. When I saw the party invitation on Dean Richardson's desk, we serve on the same nonprofit board, I decided to come and speak to you in person. Dean Richardson nodded. Patricia called me last week asking about you. I told her what I knew, that you'd been putting yourself through school while supporting your daughter, that your grades were exemplary despite your circumstances. I've seen people with every advantage in the world fail, Patricia continued, and I've seen people with nothing but determination succeed. You're the latter. Peterson and Associates would be lucky to have you. I was crying again, but these were different tears. Not grief or shame, relief, hope. When would I start? I managed to ask. After you take a week off, Patricia said firmly. You've been working 3 jobs for years. You just graduated this morning. You need rest. Lillian was staring at Patricia with something like awe. Thank you, she said. Thank you for seeing her when no one else did. Oh, people saw her, Patricia replied. They just didn't value her properly. She glanced meaningfully at Gerald. The dean stepped forward with his leather folder. Miss Mitchell, I realize this has been an overwhelming day, but there's one more item of business. The university wanted to present you with this. He pulled out a framed certificate. In recognition of your exceptional sacrifice and dedication to ensuring your daughter's education, we're awarding you our first ever Parent Advocate Award. It comes with a $5,000 scholarship fund you can use toward continuing education if you choose to pursue a master's degree. I stared at the certificate, unable to process everything happening. Lillian's grandmother, who had been quiet for several minutes, suddenly spoke up again. "Gerald," she said, her voice like ice, "I want you to understand something very clearly. I'm calling my attorney first thing Monday morning. You will return Lillian's $50,000 trust fund with interest, or I will pursue criminal charges." "That's not a threat. That's a promise." Gerald looked up, his face haggard. "Mom, please." "Don't mom me," she cut him off. "I'm also restructuring my will. You're getting nothing. Everything will go to Lillian, with Sarah as the trustee until Lillian turns 30. At least Sarah has proven she can be trusted with money meant for Lillian's benefit." She walked over to me and took both my hands in hers. "I'm so deeply sorry. I should have questioned things more. I should have checked on you both. I believed my son when he said you were fine, and I was wrong to do that." "You couldn't have known," I said softly. "But I should have," she insisted. "I should have looked deeper. I should have visited you. I should have asked Lillian more questions." She turned to Lillian. "I'm sorry to you too, sweetheart. I gave your father control of that trust fund because I thought he'd do right by you. I was wrong." "It's not your fault, Grandma," Lillian said, hugging her. "I'll make it right," her grandmother promised. "Every penny, plus interest. It'll be yours, Lillian, for graduate school or a house or whatever you need." Gerald slumped further against the wall. "I was going to pay it back," he said weakly, but no one was listening anymore. Yvonne had edged closer to the door. "I think I should leave," she muttered. "Good idea," several people said in unison. Lillian's Uncle James was still blocking the main exit. "Gerald stays until the police arrive," he said. "Police?" Gerald's head snapped up. "Why are the police coming?" The dean held up his phone. "The university filed a report for potential financial fraud. They're required to investigate." The rest of the evening was a blur. The police did come. They took statements from me, from the dean, from Lillian's grandmother, from multiple witnesses. Gerald and Yvonne were questioned separately. But the real whirlwind started the next morning. Lillian's friends had posted their videos online, not just a few, dozens of clips from different angles. By dawn, graduation truth was trending nationally. Thousands of comments poured in. "This mother is a hero. The dad is despicable. That woman worked 3 jobs? The way he let her believe she was a failure. I'm crying. That video of her graduating alone destroyed me." Lillian's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My phone, which rarely rang at all, was ringing constantly. News outlets wanted interviews. Talk shows were reaching out. Complete strangers were sending messages of support. Gerald's employer, a prestigious financial firm, put him on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. They released a statement. "We take allegations of financial impropriety very seriously." Yvonne's medical spa, which she co-owned with Gerald, was flooded with 1-star reviews. People were canceling appointments. Her business partners were demanding she'd buy them out or sell her share. Lillian called me that morning, her voice raw. "Mom, it's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. TMZ just called me." "TMZ?" I was exhausted, having barely slept. "It's insane. People are calling you the graduation mom. There are memes, Mom. Good memes. Supportive ones. People are posting pictures of their parents who sacrificed for them." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I just wanted you to have a good education." "I know," Lillian said. "Mom, I wrote you a letter. Can I bring it over?" "Of course, baby." She arrived an hour later with a 10-page handwritten letter. We sat in my tiny studio apartment, which suddenly didn't feel so cramped. And she read it to me. The letter detailed everything. Every lie Gerald had told her over the years. Every time she'd dismissed me or taken me for granted because she thought I had nothing to offer. Every moment she now saw differently through the lens of truth. "When I was 16, Lillian read, Dad told me you didn't come to my dance recital because you didn't care. But now I know you were working a double shift because the spring semester bill was due. When I was 18, she continued, her voice breaking, Dad said you didn't help me move into the dorms because you were too tired. But now I know you'd worked all night cleaning offices so you could pay my housing deposit. When I was 20, she read, I complained to Dad that you never took me shopping or out to nice restaurants. He said it was because you were bad with money, but now I know every dollar you had went to my education. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Mom, for every assumption, for every time I believed him over you, for every moment I made you feel like you weren't enough. I pulled her close. You were a child. He manipulated you. That's not your fault. But I'm not a child anymore, she said. I'm 22. I should have questioned things. I should have wondered why you lived in a studio while Dad lived in a mansion. I should have asked why you never bought yourself anything nice. I should have seen you. We cried together for a long time. When we finally pulled apart, Lillian wiped her eyes and said, I want to meet your boyfriend. I blinked. What boyfriend? Tyler. He's been texting me. He wants to meet the strongest woman I know. She managed a small smile. Will you have dinner with us tonight, please? I'd love to, I said. That evening, we met at a quiet diner. Nothing fancy, just comfortable. Tyler was a kind young man who looked at Lillian like she hung the moon. Mrs. Mitchell, he said, shaking my hand, Lillian's told me everything, what you did. He shook his head in amazement. That's real love. That's what I want to build with Lillian, the kind of love that sacrifices without keeping score. Over the next few weeks, Lillian and I started therapy together. Lynn was patient and kind, helping us rebuild our relationship on a foundation of truth, instead of lies. You've both been victims of manipulation, Dr. Lynn explained in our third session. Gerald created a false reality where Sarah was inadequate and he was the hero. Lillian, you weren't wrong to believe your father. Children are supposed to be able to trust their parents. Lillian nodded, wiping tears. But I'm an adult now. I should have. Should have what? Dr. Lynn interrupted gently. Investigated your own father? Assumed he was lying? That's not how family relationships are supposed to work. He violated your trust. That's on him. The sessions helped. Lillian learned the extent of my sacrifices, not just the financial ones, but the emotional toll. The surgeries I'd postponed because I couldn't afford time off work, the car I'd sold, the retirement fund I'd emptied, the friends I'd lost touch with because I was always working. You gave up your whole life for me, Lillian said in one session. No, I corrected gently. You were my life. Everything I did was a choice, and I'd do it again. Lillian was making changes too. She moved out of the apartment Gerald had been paying for and got a roommate situation she could afford with her new entry-level marketing job. She was determined to succeed on her own terms. I don't want anything from Dad, she told me. Not his money, not his connections, not his guilt gifts. I want to know I earned everything myself, like you did. She also started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping single mothers navigate resources. Someone should have helped you, she told me. Maybe I can help someone else. The viral attention eventually died down, but the impact remained. My phone still rang with messages of support. Other single mothers reached out, sharing their stories. I started a small blog about my journey, which somehow gained thousands of followers. Patricia was true to her word. After my week off, the first real vacation I'd had in a decade, I started at Peterson & Associates. Gerald faced serious consequences. Lillian's grandmother filed a lawsuit for the trust fund theft. My attorney, who took my case pro bono after the story went viral, filed for 9 years of back child support plus interest. The university's investigation found evidence that Gerald had actively discouraged Lillian from applying for financial aid and work-study programs, likely to hide the fact that he wasn't actually paying her tuition. His firm let him go. The official statement cited serious ethical concerns and violation of our moral standards clause. Yvonne filed for divorce within 2 weeks, trying desperately to distance herself from the scandal. In the divorce proceedings, it came out that they'd been living beyond their means for years, accumulating massive debt to maintain their lifestyle. Gerald was forced to sell the Mercedes. The house went on the market. He moved into a modest apartment, smaller than the one I'd lived in for 9 years. I didn't feel triumphant about his downfall. I just felt tired and ready to move forward. Lillian asked if she could see him. I didn't try to stop her. That was her decision to make. She came back from that meeting with red eyes but a firm jaw. He apologized, she said, but it felt hollow, like he was sorry he got caught, not sorry for what he did. Did he ask about me? I couldn't help asking. He did. He said to tell you he was sorry. Lillian's expression hardened. I told him he should tell you himself. He said he was too ashamed. I told him that after 9 years of stealing credit for your sacrifice, shame was the least of what he should feel. She sat down heavily. I told him I needed time, that maybe someday we could rebuild something, but it would take years of him actually changing, not just saying the right words. He cried. I didn't. I pulled her close. That took strength. I learned from the best, she said. 6 months later, my life was unrecognizable in the best way possible. I loved my job at Peterson & Associates. Patricia had been right, the work suited me. I was good at it. My coworkers respected me. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't have to work 3 jobs just to survive. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but it had a real kitchen, a comfortable bedroom, and windows that let in natural light. Lillian helped me decorate. We went to thrift stores together, finding treasures and making memories. Lillian came over every Sunday for dinner. It became our sacred tradition. We'd cook together, talk about our weeks, watch movies, or just sit in comfortable silence. Sometimes Tyler joined us. Sometimes my brother James came. I even started dating. Robert was a project manager at Peterson & Associates, kind, steady, and genuine. He treated me with a respect I'd forgotten was possible. We took things slowly, building a foundation of friendship first. I don't want to rush anything, he told me on our 3rd date. You deserve someone who values you for who you are, not what you can give them. I cried happy tears that night. For the first time in a decade, I could breathe. I could pay my bills without panic. I could buy groceries without calculating every penny. I could save money for my future. I started paying off the debt I'd accumulated, putting Lillian through school. It would take time, but for once, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Best of all, I had my daughter back. The real Lillian, not the version Gerald had shaped, but the kind, thoughtful, strong young woman she truly was. She was thriving in her job, building a life of integrity, learning to trust herself again. Watching her grow and heal was the greatest gift I could have asked for. Mom, I have an idea, Lillian said one Sunday evening. We were cleaning up after dinner, working side by side in my small kitchen. It felt peaceful, domestic, right? What's that, honey? I want to redo my graduation celebration, a real one, with the people who actually matter. Just close family and friends, no pretense, no country club, just honesty. I stopped wiping the counter. Are you sure? I'm sure. She turned to face me. We'll celebrate both our graduations, you and me, 2 women who fought for their education and won. That's worth celebrating properly. The dinner happened 2 weeks later at my brother James's house. It was small, just 15 people. Lillian's grandmother, James, and his wife, Lillian's best friend Jenna, and her parents, Patricia from my work, Dean Richardson, Tyler, Robert, and a few other close friends. Lillian gave a speech. This time it was the truth. A year ago, she began, her voice steady. I stood in front of a room full of people and thanked the wrong people for my education. I praised people who took credit for my mother's sacrifice. I called my mother a failure. She looked at me, her eyes shining. Mom, I can't take those words back, but I can replace them with the truth. You're the strongest, most selfless person I've ever known. You're my hero. She presented me with a framed photograph. It showed 3 images side by side, me at my graduation in my cap and gown, Lillian at hers, and a new photo of us together, both wearing our caps and gowns that James had asked us to put back on for this dinner. 2 graduates, Lillian said. 2 warriors. Everyone applauded. I couldn't stop crying. Happy tears this time. The evening was filled with laughter, honest conversation, and love. No pretense. No performance, just real people celebrating real accomplishments. As I looked around the room at the faces of people who actually cared about me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: contentment. This was what success really looked like. 1 year after that graduation party that changed everything, my life continued to unfold in ways I never imagined. Lillian was thriving. She'd been promoted at her marketing firm and had saved enough money to insist on starting to pay me back. Mom, please, she said when I protested. I need to do this. We compromised. I accepted the payments, but secretly put them into a savings account I planned to give her eventually, maybe for a house down payment or graduate school. Gerald reached out to Lillian a few times, asking to reconcile. She declined, gently but firmly. I need more time, she told him. And I need to see real change, not just words. I was proud of her for setting that boundary. The viral video had one unexpected consequence. I was invited to speak at a women's empowerment conference about resilience and sacrifice. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, I shared my story. I talked about the fear, the exhaustion, the moments I wanted to give up. But I also talked about the strength I didn't know I had. The power of a mother's love. The importance of fighting for what matters, even when the fight seems impossible. I ended with words that came straight from my heart. For 9 years, I believed I was fighting to survive. I thought I was just a woman working 3 jobs, barely keeping my head above water. But I wasn't just surviving. I was building something. I was teaching my daughter, though she couldn't see it then, what real strength looks like, what real love looks like. I paused, emotion thick in my throat. I wasn't a failure, I was a fighter. And I won. Not because I have money now or a good job or recognition. I won because I never gave up on my daughter, and eventually she found her way back to me. The standing ovation lasted so long I had to step off the stage and compose myself backstage. Lillian was in the front row when I peeked out. She was crying, mouthing words I could read clearly. That's my mom. For the first time in my entire adult life, I felt it fully, completely, without doubt. I was enough. I had always been enough. My worth wasn't measured in dollars or degrees or recognition. It was measured in love, in sacrifice, in the quiet strength of showing up every single day, even when the world told me I wasn't important. I looked at my daughter, healthy and whole, and choosing her own path with integrity. I looked at my own reflection in the backstage mirror, a woman who had survived, grown, and learned to value herself. And I knew with absolute certainty, I wasn't just enough. I was extraordinary.